Hello, my name is Steve Simpson. I'm a member of the Technology Integration and Innovation Department. I'll be your guide as you learn about Blocksi basics over the next 30 minutes. Please take a moment and review the course objectives and outcomes. Before I begin, please know the Technology Integration and Innovation Department is your partner in successful implementation of high-impact learning apps in your classroom. Check out our website to learn more about the ways that we can support you in your work. In order to earn the half-hour credit of continuing professional education credit for this course, you must score at least 70% on the interactive questions you will see throughout the video. So what exactly is Blocksi? Blocksi is a web-based app that allows teachers to both monitor and control student activity when working on district-managed Chromebooks and Windows computers. This is possible because of monitoring extensions and software installed on those devices. However, be aware that Blocksi will not monitor students using the Surface Go tablets found at some high schools. Using Blocksi every day is a good idea because it benefits both the teacher and students in grades 2 through 12 in many ways. This interactive video provides an overview of the most basic and beneficial of Blocksi functions that provide many of those benefits. Let's get started. How does a teacher access Blocksi? Most teachers will log into Blocksi by clicking on the Blocksi icon in RapidID, password.aisd.net. Some teachers will log in at teacher.blocksi.net with the Google sign-in option. So which option will you choose? If you're a teacher with scheduled classes in Frontline, you'll log in via RapidID and will be able to sync your classes and student rosters by clicking the Clever button visible on your teacher dashboard in Blocksi. Here's a teacher-recorded video visually demonstrating the login steps and the steps for syncing your classes with the Clever button. If you're a teacher or a long-term substitute who doesn't have scheduled classes in Frontline, you'll log in at teacher.blocksi.net and will manually create your classes and add your students. If neither of these login options works for you, it's likely you need to request a Blocksi account. Please see the Google form in the Course Resources module to request an account. Now that you're logged in, know that the best way to ensure that Blocksi works for you every day is to create a schedule that indicates the times in which the app should be actively monitoring students' browsing activity. Logically, those are your class times. Classes imported into or created manually in Blocksi are by default 45 minutes in duration. However, a class's length can be increased to a maximum of 180 minutes if needed. I'll point out where to adjust the class time in a few moments. Note the position on the dashboard where it's possible to manually create a new class, and note that I've created a class for my yearbook club. On the teacher dashboard, click on the Show Hide Schedule button, and then on the Class Scheduler button. You'll note the calendar supports AB block scheduling, especially useful for high school schedules. Most teachers will only need to click on the Week A tab and go through the simple process of building each class's weekly schedule. So I'm clicking on the Week A tab, and I want to build an automatic schedule for my third period social studies class. I would select that class in the dropdown. I would proceed to tell Blocksi the days of the week on which that class meets. For a junior high teacher, it's every day. For a high school teacher, the days might alternate. More about that in a second. And typically my class is always going to start at the same time. My third period class starts at 10:30 a.m. I'm going to add that class, and it appears on my schedule. High school teachers will want to use both the Week A and Week B tabs to ensure their block schedule is built accurately. Repeat this process of adding classes until they've all been added. High school teachers will want to use both the Week A and Week B tabs. For now, ignore the Custom Week tab. Now that your weekly class schedule is built, you're ready to schedule it on the calendar. Click on the Weekly Scheduler tab and input the relevant first and last school week information. As you can see, I've entered the date range for the first week of the school year and the last week. I'm going to select Set School Year. And now I need to tell Blocksi which schedule to run on which weeks of the school year. Note, the calendar shows a square for each week of the school year. In other words, it's not a monthly calendar, it's a weekly calendar. You'll click on the weeks to indicate which weekly schedule should run on each week. For elementary and junior high school teachers, this is very easy because they'll set every week to run the Week A schedule. Once you've selected the desired weeks, don't forget to click Save. Of course, high school teachers will use a combination of Week A and Week B to assign across the year. It's important to do this side by side with your school calendar so you can account for Thanksgiving, winter break, and spring break weeks when assigning Week A and Week B schedules to the weeks of the year. When done, it's critical that you click the Close button, which functions to save your work. After closing the class scheduler window, be sure to activate your schedule by toggling the off switch to on. Congratulations on setting up your schedule. Now, Blocksi will be active when students are in your class, and you won't have to manually start and stop each class day after day. Let's now go into a class to explore where the real benefits of Blocksi are found. To access a class, simply click on its name. You'll note that my class is small, but that won't impact my ability to show you how to use Blocksi with your own students. This is what a class looks like when it's not running an active session. Note that there is a manual start button. Anytime you use Blocksi to monitor students, it's critical that you understand that students are locked into your classroom and are subject to your class settings. If you manually start a class halfway through your 45-minute class period, then those students are going to be locked into your class for 20 minutes after they leave. This can cause all manner of problems, including students being unable to complete their assignments in other classes and making your colleagues angry with you. To avoid this, always remember to stop a manually created session, or better yet, create a schedule via the weekly scheduler. Before I start this class session to demonstrate some of the most basic and useful monitoring and control tools, please note that you can rename your class, edit the default class name, and adjust the maximum number of tabs that a student can have open by clicking the Edit button and making the desired changes. Here for the name, here for the time, and here for the number of tabs a student can have open. I'm going to now manually start the class, and you'll immediately notice that the tiles representing the students in my class begin to come alive as Blocksi starts monitoring them. You know students are logged onto district devices when you see the green icon next to their names. Note that you can exclude any student who's not in class or that you don't want monitored. Also note the grid layout that allows you to move tiles around, to mirror a seating chart, or to bring students in need of closer monitoring to the top of the grid. Using Control Plus and Control Minus, you can enlarge the size of the student tiles and the grid, depending on your preference. If you ever see a student in your class that's still being monitored in another teacher's class, you'll be able to hijack them to bring them into your class session. Something to know about Blocksi. Anything you can do to control the class's activity are functions you can use to control an individual student's activity as well. Blocksi can even allow you to set up groups of students, but we won't go into that in this course. Let me demonstrate the purpose of the most basic functions in Blocksi. I'll start with the heads up feature. If you need the entire class's attention, in other words, you need to interrupt them to clarify an instruction or answer a question, click the Heads Up button. Choose an amount of time and click Confirm. This overlays the browser on the browser of the student's devices a heads up prompt. In most cases, you will manually end the heads up prompt, but if you want to prevent students from using their devices for a certain amount of time, the duration timer does allow you to do that. Having clarified the instructions for this class in the face-to-face classroom, I'm now ready to cancel. Simply cancel heads up to end the call to attention and allow students to resume their work. Now look at this individual student's tile. Do you see the pause button underneath their icon? This is how you can use heads up with just an individual student or with multiple students, rather than impacting the entire class. You can cancel the individual heads up by clicking the same icon again. I bet you can think of many helpful uses for heads up in your classroom this school year. The next whole class function button is Share and Force. This function allows you to either share one or more websites so they're automatically open in students' Chrome browser, or to enforce one or more websites that become the only sites they can access during the class session. Put another way, to share is to give students what they need, but not to restrict their access to other sites they choose to visit. To enforce is to prevent them from accessing any sites not included in your enforce list. I'm going to click the button so you can see the way that it works. Let's pretend that at the beginning of the year, I want to highlight a couple of sections of the student code of conduct by copying and pasting the URL for the code of conduct into the field. When I click Share Page, see what happens to student screens. The web link that I'm sharing to them immediately opens in a new Chrome browser tab and becomes the tab visible on their screens. Let's look at that again. Here's how I can add more than one URL by clicking the Add Field button and pasting in an additional link. In this case, a link to a library resource. Now, enforcing websites on students works the same way, but you'll note that it includes a time duration, just like heads up. Maybe I wanted my students to only see a specific video on CNN 10. I've enforced that site for their view, and just like with heads up, I can end an enforced page by clicking Stop Enforce at any time. How much productivity time do you think you can save day to day and week to week by sending students to exactly where they need to be, rather than writing a link on the board or waiting for every student to type it in correctly and get where they need to be? And don't forget, you can share or enforce for individual students too, by simply clicking the lightning bolt icon underneath their individual tile. Now, what if there's a website that's not blocked by the district filter, but that you never want your students to access? YouTube, for example. Blocksi allows you to block students from accessing certain websites, so it can function like your own classroom internet filter. Let's take YouTube. While there's lots of instructionally valuable content in YouTube, you don't want your students watching random YouTube videos in class when they should be focused on their schoolwork. Note the block and allow buttons and these checkboxes. Now watch how I can add YouTube to the class block list. Because I want to block the entire domain, meaning all YouTube videos, I'm going to verify that the block domain checkbox is enabled. And then click the block button. This brings up a new window where I need to type in or copy and paste the YouTube link, www.youtube.com. Then I click Block Page. You may wonder, how do I know if it worked? Click on the down arrow to expand this section of the teacher dashboard. You'll see YouTube in my block list. Note the asterisk symbol next to the URL. That's what Blocksi refers to as a wildcard. And it's what tells you that the entire domain is blocked. You can see that in my allowed list, the sites that I have sent to my students also appear because I've shared these sites with them. If you don't see the wildcard next to the URL, that means the entire domain is not blocked. But what if you need students to watch a specific YouTube video on a certain class day? You want to unselect Allow Domain and click Allow. Put the specific YouTube video URL in the field and then click Allow. Now my students can no longer access YouTube, but they can access this one specific video. I'm going to close the block allow list, and I want to point out what's happened. You may have noticed that on some of my students' screens, they were using YouTube. And now, Blocksi is denying their ability to watch the YouTube content that they had been watching previously. If I share the YouTube video with them that I added to the allow list, you'll note that students are able to view the allowed video that I've shared with them, but they are not allowed to utilize videos in other parts of the YouTube domain. Finally, let me show you how easy it is to block a website that a student is on and simultaneously add it to the class block list. This student is using a site called GitHub. There's no reason the student should be on this site during my class session. I could just close it. His tab would disappear, but he'd be able to reopen it. In this case, I want to add it to the block list, preventing him from accessing this site, but also preventing all my other students from accessing the site. Let's check and see if that happened. It did. GitHub is now blocked. Note the wildcard representing that the entire domain has been blocked for my students' access. As you spend time adding key sites to your block and allow lists, please note there's a checkbox that it will keep the URLs active on the next session. You can also save your block and allow lists and reload them using these icons for easy future use. Final function I'd like to show you is how you can narrow in and see the specific browsing activity of a specific student in your class. You may note that right now, 2 of my 3 students are watching the video that I shared with them. One student, though, has navigated to espn.com. If I click on that student's tile, it'll expand, giving me greater insight and ability to see exactly what that student is browsing. I can still perform all the functions and controls across the tabs that he has open here. For example, I could close espn.com. Now that my class is over, it's important that because I manually started it, I manually stop it. This is not necessary for using the class scheduler. However, I do not want my students to be locked into my class settings when they go to their next class. I'm going to stop the session. Now I can click on Teacher Dashboard to get back and see all of my classes and await my next class. Now that you've seen so many of the fundamental and powerful features available to you in Blocksi, let's talk about some good and not so good ways to use it daily. For starters, using Blocksi shouldn't mean that you're rooted at your desk while students are using technology in your classroom. Instead, you should use Blocksi to proactively prevent students from accessing distracting websites, use Blocksi to quickly get students where they need to be on the web, and use Blocksi to perform quick visual checks that confirm students are focused on the appropriate online tasks. A highly effective use of Blocksi is to project your teacher dashboard via the classroom projector while students are working on web-based assignments. This empowers you to see the dashboard from anywhere in the room and empowers students to monitor one another too. Blocksi should free you from being anchored at your desk and give you the confidence to work one-on-one with small groups of students because you no longer have to worry that students are off task while using classroom devices. One final note, you should let your students know that you're using Blocksi. Be transparent about why it's being used. There's a digital poster in the resources module in the course that you can use to introduce Blocksi to your students this year. What should you do if something isn't working correctly in Blocksi, or if you have a question? The fastest way to get support is to chat with a Blocksi support agent by clicking on the chat bubble in the bottom right-hand corner of your teacher dashboard. Additional options include emailing Blocksi support or calling their support team. If something isn't right with your class rosters, or Blocksi isn't working on specific devices in your classroom, please submit a help ticket in ServiceNow so that AISD staff can investigate the issue. You can also call the AISD service desk at 682-867-7394. In the Canvas course, you'll find each of these support options listed in case you need to refer back to them. Did you enjoy this learning opportunity about Blocksi? Are you ready to learn more about Blocksi and the other apps that TI² endorses? Be sure to search for additional learning opportunities, including a Blocksi Next Steps course in KickUp. You can easily search for our specific department offerings there. Also, please remember that help is never far away. There are multiple ways to find and leverage our team's support, as well as the support of AISD's Technology Support Department and Blocksi's support options. Thank you so much for participating in this course. I trust that you're going to use Blocksi during the school year, save valuable instructional time, and prevent off-task student online behaviors. Please print out the implementation checklist found in the Canvas course resources module to help implement the steps that I demonstrated in the video. You'll find they're all listed here as reminders, as well as support resources to remember you can wield if you have questions or a need for additional information. Now, if you've successfully completed the course with a score of 70% or higher on the interactive video quiz, then your course credit should automatically be updated in KickUp. Please contact me if that's not the case. Have a great school year, enjoy using Blocksi, and enjoy keeping kids safe and on task. Thank you.